am I playing with fire, filming this 10 minutes before I have to jump on for D&D? Yes. Am I definitely not going to finish this in time? Also yes. But we're going to do it anyway and deal with the weird editing I'll have to do retroactively to fix that. Hi, it's Jessie. Welcome to another turning where I sometimes talk about books. I'm drinking some random cocktail I made with Aperol and gin, and this is my spring 2023 highs and lows. Alright, so let's talk about some of my favorite books from this spring. This is, of course, covering March, April, and May of 2023. In that time, why do I never count this ahead of time? In that time, I read 16 books that were 4 or more stars. They should be scrolling on the screen now if they haven't already started, which is a pretty good month for period for me. That's about average. I also had 4 DNFs and 2 books I really hated, so some real low lows too. So let's just go ahead, jump into my 5 favorite books from this period in no particular order. Let's go alphabetically. So first on this list, if we're going alphabetically, is Cantores by Catalonia de Roberts, which I got recommended to me when I filled out a form for my librarian to recommend me books. And I did this video trying a chapter from each of them, and then I promised a vlog that I didn't do. But I'm here to tell you that I did love that book as much as I expected. So the premise of this is it is in Uruguay. It might be Paraguay. Uruguay. Shortly after there has just been a big uprising, a coup, and we're following a group of lesbians who escape on occasion to this like small coastal town where they can kind of live freely away from the pressures of this really restrictive regime they are under. And it just sucked me in. Each of these women were just amazing. They each had their own stories, their own lives, complicated relationships they had with coming into their sexuality, figuring out their sexuality, and it covers most of their lives from when they first meet at this place to the current day. And it was just delightful. I loved it from beginning to end. There was never a moment I was like, this is fine. And that's weird. It's historical fiction. It is nothing like anything I've ever read. I don't know why this librarian, like, from what I said, thought this lesbian historical fiction. I mean, I said I liked queer things, but like everything I gave her was like them. I don't know if it was who it was. Everything I gave him was like sci-fi, fantasy, maybe some romance, and she was like, this is it. And boy, were they right, because I adored this book. So next up is going to be The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chachki. This was cute. So the premise is about indigo. And at the beginning of the book, we're from the perspective of a unnamed bridegroom who meets indigo. They very quickly get married, and the deal is that he can never look into her past. But then something happens that pulls them to her childhood home. And then we start seeing him trying not to, but then slowly starting to dig into her past, juxtaposed with flashbacks to her childhood. And things happen. This was really interesting. Most of my appeal for it, if I'm being honest, was that it was just beautifully written. It was gorgeous, pulled me through it. I think there's things that could have made this better. I think about 2/3, it's funny, Books and Lala just put up her, at the time I'm filming this, just put up her May wrap-up, and she summed up my thoughts on this so perfectly, which is that there is something you kind of predict pretty early on. And it turns out, maybe, that's right. But about 2/3 of the way through, there was a thought in my head about a way this could end that would have been fantastic, and I just ended up disappointed that the ending wasn't that. Which isn't the fault of the book. That's my own feelings getting projected onto the book. But other than that, it was beautifully written. It deals with a lot of really complex and detailed and nuanced issues, and I think it handles them very well. I actually kind of wish it was less fantastical, which is kind of a weird thing for me to say. But for me, and I don't think this was the intent of the author, for me, I kept wondering, is this actually fantastical? Or is there a mundane explanation and this is being filtered through the lens of a child, filtered through the lens of this grieving man? And I was kind of disappointed that it was fantastical, because I think I might have preferred it if it wasn't. But again, that's me putting my own spin on it. I don't think that was the intent of the author at any point. All right, back from D&D. I have enough time to talk about one, maybe two more books, and then I have to refill my drink. Next up, let me slide back, is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. T.K. Kingfisher? Sometimes. I don't know. T. Kingfisher. This is about a young woman, not young woman, she's 30. It's about a woman who is a princess, but also almost a nun. Her sister was married to the king and died, and now her other sister is married, or to the prince, sorry, married to the prince. And for reasons that become clear throughout the story, she wants to kill the prince. So she is on a quest to kill the prince. That's it. We get to meet all sorts of fun, colorful characters along the way, and it is so neat, and it is in this vein of adult fairy tales that are becoming super popular. Actually, The Last Tale of the Flower Bride would fit into this. Juniper and Thorn might kind of fit into this vibe. Another book I'll talk about in a minute would fit into this. It's just kind of that fairy tale vibe, but adult themes. I just am into it right now, which is great because a lot of people are putting them out right now, maybe faster than I can read them. Regardless, it is just fantastic. I absolutely adore it, and I had a lot of fun with this. It was a book club book, which meant I got to discuss it and talk about it with my friends and get even more excited about it as I talked about it. Book club books just always end up higher after I talk about them, or sometimes lower. Sometimes not, but usually if I like it already, I end up loving it by the end of the discussion because it's just so wonderful. So this is going to stick with me. And I just think it's really delightful. It's got some dark themes. It talks about abuse and the pressure on women and the value of women being so tied to children, and that women can only fit certain roles. They can be a mother or a spinster, that's not quite the word, a godmother. They can be, you know, a witch or a nun, and if they don't fit into those roles, it's wrong. And I just think it's really beautifully written. There's some really cool magic world building stuff that's really neat to explore. It explores the evil of mankind, and I just adored this book. It was wonderful, beginning to end. I need to read more T. Kingfisher. This is like the third one I've read, and I need to read more. Next up, can't read my thing from up here, is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a book written in prose. It is about a young woman, I think she's 16, so a girl, who is kind of just dealing with figuring out who she is. She is dealing with confronting her relationship to God, while also confronting her relationship with her mother, while also dealing with the feelings she's feeling towards boys, and that she has this burgeoning sexuality that she wants to explore, but also there's the pressure, and she has such a complicated relationship to that because there's the way men and boys have been viewing her whole life that she kind of dislikes. And it is just a really quick read. I think I read it in an afternoon, that just covers such a wide range of really interesting things. It's about an Afro-Latino girl, so it deals with like the specific ways Afro-Latinas, both Latinas and African American women, Black women, how their bodies are over-sexualized from a remarkably young age. It deals with the trauma, the generational trauma that gets passed down. It deals with her relationship with her brother, who is gay, and figuring out what that means. It's just, there's a lot to unpack in this relatively really small book, and it's all told through her learning poetry and learning how to value the skills that she has, even if the world doesn't necessarily value them, and learning how to express herself. And I think it's really, really amazing, and I'm glad I read it. And it's definitely one of those books that I would recommend to most of my students, I think, actually, because I think it deals with things about how to express yourself in a healthy way. You know, a skill that's not taught to a lot of adolescents. I just think it's full of these great lessons that I think a lot of the kids I teach could really benefit from. It was in our classroom libraries last year, and I didn't pick it up then, and I should have, because I definitely would have pushed some of my kids to read it, because part of the thing that I think it would appeal to them is that it's a quick read. Like, it's poems, it's relatively short, it's like this many words per page, you know, and I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was absolutely beautiful and remarkable, and I think everybody should read it. Last one. This one might take me a while to talk through, but I'm going to go ahead anyway and get on it, and if I can't get a drink before I have to jump back in the game, then I won't get a drink. Thistlefoot by somebody. The book's up here. Thistlefoot. How do I describe Thistlefoot that provides enough information, but not too much information? Well, so the way it's described is a Baba Yaga retelling, which it's not, but it is. It is about these two siblings, whose names I cannot remember right now, because they were weird names, if I remember right. Anyway, two siblings, brother and a sister. They're kind of estranged. We know that the brother is kind of a little down on his luck. He's a bit of a grifter, getting through life. Recently had something tragic happen that we don't know at the beginning of the story what it is. Sister is going to school. She's a crafter, an artisan. She seems to be doing pretty okay. Rocky. Both of them have very rocky relationships to their parents. And then they get a letter that says to meet at the docks. They have something. And they get gifted a house from, like, their great-great-great-grandmother who just passed away from, you know, the motherland, which is, you know, Eastern Europe. And we get told, so they have this story going on where they've inherited this house, and this brother decides to work up the scheme that they're going to use it as a roving theater, puppet theater, so that they can make some money. The sister, anyway. Meanwhile, we also get flashbacks told through the perspective of the house, which I absolutely adore, to the birth of the house and things going on with the house that we kind of figure out from both perspectives. And there's a villain that's chasing them, and it's just so good. Like, so good. This book was so unexpected. In a similar way to, like, Contours was so unexpected, this was also unexpected, just because I expected this to be, if I say the word expected one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. What I thought this was going to be was something along the lines of, like, a Juniper and Thorn, or a Nettle and Bone, which is a book that's, like, kind of adult fairy tale-esque, and has some deep meanings, but nothing that's really gonna impact me the way that, you know, I would think a book would. And I was very wrong. First off, this is modern, which I was not expecting. I don't know why I wasn't. It takes place in the modern day. But it's weird because there's this, like, other element of, like, houses sometimes just do weird things. Factories might just grow wings, you know? Your house has tentacles now. It's a thing that just, like, happens. So, like, the fact that, like, this is a house with chicken legs that can move around, it's a little weird, but it's really not that weird. Anyway, but other than that, like, this is our world. And the one thing, and I want to say it because I feel like it tells you why this book impacted me so much, but I also feel like it's kind of, I don't know if it's in the description, I don't know if it would be considered a spoiler, but this book, come to find out, these kids, well, I guess we know pretty early, these kids are Jewish, and we find out a lot about, it deals a lot with pogroms and the very, very, very awful history between Eastern Europe and Jews, and it just hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. And I think, I mean, beyond that, like, the symbolism that's wrapped up in it and everything, I really want to reread this. This is another one similar to Meet Me in Another Life from last month, or last quarter. I honestly kind of want to pick this book up and just immediately reread it. So, tell me, you know, what if I just take, like, December to reread my favorite books? Tempting. This book, I went to, like, literally every Discord server for books I'm in and was like, I just read this book. Everybody needs to read it immediately. I love it. I adore it. I just am obsessed. All right? and it's all about hatred and why people hate and how destructive that is and how we need to overcome that and it's so good. I'm not even coherent. And I'm telling you, this book is so good. Everybody needs to read it. Not everybody's going to love it the way I loved it. Not everybody's going to be affected by it the way I was affected by it. But it's so good. I need to get back to the game now. All right, next break. Let's talk DNFs real quick before we get into the lows. I had 4 DNFs. I genuinely don't really care about them. First one is Hester. This is supposed to be a retelling of Scarlet Letter, and I DNF'd this fairly quickly because I realized it just wasn't going to be what I was expecting or looking for from this. I thought it was going to be actually following the story of the Scarlet Letter, but it's actually about Hester, like, before all of that, and it wasn't what I wanted. Next was The Bruising of... I don't know how to say this because I was listening to the audiobook and it clearly did not leave an impression. It's very short. It's like a 4-hour-long audiobook, but I read like half of it, and I don't remember if I went to bed or if it was while I was working. Like, I listened in the morning and then I had work. Regardless, when I went to pick it back up, I could not remember anything, and I was like, you know what? I don't care enough to try to remember. Which is really disappointing because, like, there was a lot of things about it that sounded cool. It had to do with the pandemic, which is just, like, the vibe I'm in. It's queer. It just, there's a lot of things that I wanted to like about it, but, like, it just wasn't memorable. Next was Glitter and Ashes. This was another one the librarian recommended to me. This was just a case of, it takes me a long time to read short story collections. I will read 2 or 3, then put it down for a week, read 2 or 3, put it down for a week, and it had to be returned to the library. I might pick it up and finish it at some point. I'm not in a rush. The one that disappoints me, though, is The Genesis of Misery by Neon Yang. I've been looking forward to this. Neon Yang wrote The Tensorate. Where's it at? Oh, The Tensorate, which is one of my favorite series. I think it's delightful, it's unique, it's interesting, so I was really looking forward to this. And maybe I should have paid attention to the blurb more and not who was writing it, because this is described as like Joan of Arc meets Gundams, but gay, which, like, sounds intriguing. First off, the Gundams didn't come in till like halfway through. I just had to admit to myself that I wasn't enjoying this book. There's some beautiful lines. I love the introduction. There are these, like, interludes that are sometimes really cool, sometimes not, that, like, show you more about the world and the world building and the religion that are really neat. But I just didn't care. And I wanted to care. I was trying so hard. I mean, look how far into this book I got. I got, like, that far. Look at that. And I just couldn't make myself care. I was trying, and I wanted to love it, and it's beautifully written, and the characters are interesting, and I'm sure the plot was good. I don't know. I just don't know, because it just didn't grab me. It didn't keep my interest, no matter how much I was trying. And so what I did is I went away for a weekend, and I purposely didn't bring this with me. I was like, I'm not going to bring it with me. I'm going to see what some time apart does for us. And I didn't think about it. And at one moment I was like, huh, I didn't bring Genesis of Misery with me. I wonder how I feel about that. And I felt nothing. And I got home and I was like, I don't want to pick you up again. And then I left it by my bedside. I literally just got it off of my little bedside table for this video. It's been sitting there. I've read a whole book and during my nighttime routine in the time this has been sitting there. And I need to admit I'm DNFing this, but I don't want to admit it because it's so disappointing. And it's not bad. It's not bad. There is some things that are a little heavy-handed. Like, at one point, my partner was reading it to me because I was doing something I don't remember. Oh, I was folding laundry. And I was like, I'm trying to read my book. And he's like, you need to fold laundry. I was like, fine, then read my book to me. So he did. And it does some, like, I don't know. I'm mixed about it. Like, every time it introduces a character, it gives you their pronouns right away. Which, on one hand, I think is good. It normalizes pronouns. I think there's something to be said for that. But also, it totally stops the rhythm of the story. Things like that got really clunky. And there's other ways to do it. Like, the way that, like, the Ocean's Echo Winter's Orbit does it, I think is really clever. Where there's a built-in world-building thing. I mean, this is like they're wearing name tags that have their pronouns on it because they're all, like, military personnel. And that makes sense. But it's just kind of clunky. And it didn't. I'm just so disappointed. I wanted to love this book. Look how beautiful it is. I love the colors on this. It's gorgeous. The world building is so cool because it takes like these aspects of Catholicism, but also combines it with space travel. And there's this really cool thing of like they were traveling in space and then they all started going crazy. And it's so good in concept, but the plot, I just didn't care. And the thing is that I didn't care is there was no actual conflict, right? We have our main character, Misery, and she is going through this whole thing, and I just don't get it. Like, her whole thing is she's just doing this to try to survive, right? And like, we know, based on what we know about like Saint Joan of Arc, that like, it just, what was the point? Like, there are these heretics, but like, she doesn't actually have a desire to fight the heretics. The church has clearly become corrupt, or not the church, but like the government has clearly become corrupt, but she doesn't seem to be striving towards fighting them. And I was just like, what is the point? If this had been a novella, I would have adored this, because I don't care when a novella doesn't have an objective. I don't care when a novella doesn't have a plot, because it's 100, 200 pages. But I spent, where's my bookmark? 260 pages with nothing happening, and there was another 140 pages left. I wanted to love this, and I'm so upset. I'm going to play D&D, and then I'll come back to you with my lows. Okay, it's the next day, if you can't tell. I went to bed after D&D. Now I'm drinking water. It's probably better I'm doing this when I'm a little less manic. I have two lows I'm going to talk about. One was disappointing and one was just bad. Let's start with the second of those because I already have a video where I talk about it in depth, so I don't want to waste too much time on it. And that's going to be The Wicked and the Willing by name. I hated this book. I read it for the Lambda. It was nominated for a Lammy for sci-fi and fiction. Fantasy, speculative, I don't know what they're calling the category, it changes every year. I hated this book. This is a book about a European white lady vampire who is in Malaysia, you know, colonizing it. And she has a habit of taking in young women to work for her, but eventually she plans on eating them as a vampire might. And she has a woman that works for her that has worked for her for many years and has helped her get these women to work for her, but finally she can't take it anymore. And this could have been good. It wasn't, and that's all I'll say about it. Watch my video vlog if you want to hear more than that. The other one I'm going to talk about kind of briefly, also I don't want to waste a ton of time on this either, is Small Game. I was looking forward to this. This is a survival thriller. It's like a reality type show where they bring people in to survive. There's like a group of like, I think it's 5 of them. Let me clean my glasses. So they bring in a group of like 5 people and they're just supposed to survive together for, I don't know if there was a specified amount of time, and there'd be like a prize if they did, yada yada yada. But then one day the film crew just like stops coming, right? And that might be more information than you need because that didn't happen till like halfway through the book, but also like pretty sure I knew that was gonna happen. That like something goes wrong, I think is how it's described. It's not like specified, but something goes wrong. This was so boring. Like, if you're gonna do the reality show thing, lean into the reality show thing, and it didn't. If you're gonna do the survivor thing, survival aspect of it, lean into that, and it didn't. It just kind of became this weird thing about the inner group dynamics, and I was so bored, and I stuck it out. I didn't DNF because I was like, well, this is building tension, and then when the stuff starts going wrong, it's gonna get exciting, and it didn't. Nothing happened. I was bored. I was so incredibly bored. So that's that. Let me know your thoughts below if you've read any of these, and that's gonna be it for me. Love y'all. Bye.